that song, Charles.
I love it. I love it. And I love the artwork.
Yeah.
This is a masterpiece.
Thank you. And you know, it's amazing that almost every time we start, no matter how prepared I am, something happens 2 seconds before I hit the go button.
Right.
I don't know how that happens.
It must be a coinky-dink.
Now, Charles, this is a special report. People are getting a full dose of Charles Ortel, the U.S. recommended daily allowance of Charles Ortel.
Well, thanks, Jason, for letting me do this and letting us do it together. That something happened in the last 24 hours that the mainstream, lamestream media is desperately trying to cover up. And I had the time and patience to watch what we're going to describe at length. Viewers will know that I've actually been to Ukraine approximately 15 times. And,
wow.
It's not.
It's boring.
Actually not. No, Odessa is very nice, actually. Odessa is really nice. And parts of Kyiv are very nice as well. But were very nice. But anyway, so I saw this what happened in the last 24 hours, and I realized right away that the mainstream would do its level best to bury it through the Memorial Day weekend. So I thought it would be useful.
You're not even talking about Alan Dershowitz.
Exactly. and so I thought it would be useful to set up, to give you a preview of what I believe is important, to give some context for people. And I like to, seldom do I do this, but I'd really like to encourage every person who watches this video to try to share it with at least 2 more people so that we get some real momentum. Watch it, share it, and think about it. This is a video that the best response so far, or the first defense so far, was the president, former president of the country, who's caught on tape. It's like, you know, Richard Pryor, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? I mean, caught on tape.
Wasn't me.
Or it wasn't me, exactly. Yeah, my other favorite.
Oh, we should have used that song.
That's right. But, you know, they're dead busted, absolutely busted. And I want to try to give some context on why this is important. First of all, what we're talking about here, I've been saying that the set of Clinton Foundation frauds and their allied entities is the largest set of unprosecuted crimes in financial terms in history. And I got to that quickly looking at the Clinton Foundation numbers, realizing they were all wrong, and then thinking about how many other related entities likely are part of this scam, and then thinking about the Clinton Foundation as really, it's a tactic, it's a way of high-tech looting using a charity. You can do the same tactic with for-profit investment schemes. And if you have a scheme, whether for-profit or not-for-profit, and there's no accounting for the money.
Not-for-profit scheme?
Yeah, well, that's what this is.
Well, it is for their profit.
Yeah, exactly. So in this case, the headline of the revelations is a Ukrainian government prosecutor has opened and announced a Ukrainian criminal investigation of the former president and naming Joe Biden personally, and I think his son Hunter, in a scheme that the prosecutor, with all of its contours, alleges involves $40 billion US just in Ukraine.
Wow.
Just in Ukraine.
Wow.
So if we think about the long time frame that we've been talking about when we started together, we're talking about a time frame, 1988 to the present. We could go further back, but maybe that's for another career. 1988 to the present is when we're talking about the Soviet Union blowing up, China deciding they want to try to pretend to be a capitalist, and they're actually a crapitalist nation, and India rejecting socialism in theory for, again, capitalism. So that's a long period of time. Now, 32, 33 years, depending on how you look at it. 33 years, Jason.
Really?
Yeah, 33 years.
This is really an important part of this press conference, Charles, and I'll put the link in the comments for people to check it out. But the subject of our press conference is new facts of international corruption and external governance of Ukraine.
So what you have in this is a 1 hour, 4 minute, and 55 second video, which we're not going to cut in and out. We have one excerpt that we're going to talk about and frame for you. But this is something that I've watched it already once. I think I may watch it 5 times just to try to get all the nuances together. They speak in Ukrainian, but they have English subtitles.
I think it's Russian technically.
I don't know. But it doesn't matter.
It's a language we don't know.
Yeah, a language other than English. And there is Ukrainian and there is Russian. So I don't know whether this is Ukrainian or Russian. But anyway, they speak chiefly in that language, the prosecutor and this parliament member. But then they have clips, extensive clips of conversations from the Situation Room, from Air Force Two, from other, where you hear the White House operator connecting Poroshenko, the former president of the Ukraine, with Biden, with Biden.
Oh, it's got to be fake.
It's all fake, of course. It all and you know, so I watched this and I said, holy crap! Let's put this in context, right? Back in January 2016. It wasn't clear that Donald Trump would actually be the nominee. Jeb Bush had $100 million he was spending. He was, acting like he was measuring the curtains for the White House.
You'll never be president.
Exactly. Yeah. Can I get some thicker glasses, please? Because I really look silly. But anyway, so it wasn't clear that Donald Trump would be POTUS, and yet, and it was also not clear that Hillary Clinton would be the nominee. The enthusiasm in January 2016 was very much for Bernie. Yeah. So in that time frame, in January 2016, a senior State Department whistleblower person takes the trouble to draft an extensive letter. In prior shows, we've given you pathways to that letter. I'm not sure which of the Hillary Clinton dumps it is in the FBI vault file. I want to say it's 23 or 25, but you'll be able to find it if you just Google it. A senior State Department person takes the trouble to draft an extensive letter to Dopey James Comey. Two versions of that letter are on the FBI vault file. One is less clear than the other. But the basic argument in the letter is the person claims to be a senior State Department person who's highly recommended, who's high security clearance, and I'm not sure it's 25, but maybe it is. And sends a letter to Comey and says, hey, Dopey, I want to go into a skiff. Here's a sample of some of the stuff I know. In essence, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton are violating their solemn oaths to the Constitution. Instead of upholding the United States laws, what they're doing is they're mishandling classified information. And I have evidence of criminal behavior involving Hillary Clinton. I want to go into a skiff, and I want to talk to you about it. And please, acknowledge that you got this letter, Dopey. And so he doesn't get an acknowledgement. And so then we know that the senior State Department person pays a visit unannounced to the Washington field office. And there's a 302 describing this visit, again, in these in the vault files. And the 302, instead of being put together in 5 days, within 5 days as it's supposed to be done, 302 being a record of an interview prepared by the investigating agents, or at least the agents involved, instead of doing that immediately, right after, I think, January 27th, 2016 or thereabouts, the thing isn't written out until 3 weeks later, 3.5 weeks later. Okay? So in January 2016, you have an insider in the Obama administration, or a career person in the Obama administration, in the State Department, walking detailed evidence into the Washington field office saying, listen, Comey didn't respond to my letter. Let's go into a skiff now. I want to explain the criminal behavior that's happening in a State Department. Now, why would we believe there was any criminal activity in the State Department? I mean, you had, in the Hillary Clinton's tenure, you had secret servers, you had unvetted electronic devices, you had people with security clearances who shouldn't even be delivering pizza. And I don't mean the child kind of pizza, I mean edible pizza. You had people like that in her State Department. You had Joe Biden vice president all the time. You then had the very not so merry John Kerry and his bouffant hairdo and his stepson teaming up with Hunter to concoct deals in Ukraine and elsewhere. And evidently the NSA and FBI and CIA were too busy tailing the Trump family to actually notice this vast amount of corruption.
Charles, where do these guys find the time? He's impregnating strippers, he's stealing money in China, Ukraine. I can barely get 4 hours of sleep in a night. This guy is burning the candle at both ends, and he's smoking crack.
Exactly, and renting cars. Renting cars, smoking crack, sleeping with his brother's widow. I mean, it's just, this is a great family to get behind. I mean, if you want to get behind a family that's ethically challenged. So back in January 2016, Trump has not yet made it across the line. But the State Department whistleblower is really interested, and this is a real whistleblower. This is somebody actually in the State Department with a high security clearance, not some schmuck kid.
Well, and we know it's a real whistleblower because you haven't heard a damn thing from him since.
And nothing's been done about it. Yeah.
Yes.
So in that background, we know that corruption reigned in the State Department under Hillary. I think that the corruption under Hillary was purposeful. The corruption under John Kerry was he was too busy on the yacht Scaramouche and hanging around with his other fancy friends to dirty his hands in the level of corruption personally that the Clintons were. Although he is a grifter, John Kerry, in my opinion. He's never made an honest dollar in his life doing anything in the private service. He makes his private sector. He makes his money marrying people, marrying rich people. That's how he does it.
I gotta take a page out of that book.
You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You really don't want to do that. Oh, maybe you want to
stick with the unemployed women.
Yeah, it's much better. It's much better. So stick with people you love. However much money they have.
You're the only person who's been in this apartment for 3 months.
So back on the context. So in January, Trump's trying to get across the line. The deep state has kind of written him off. So Biden gets in bigly into the grifter game. And this is a 4-minute thing, but they're in the long 1 hour and 4 minute exchange. You see the timeline. They did not organize it chronologically, and they should have. They should have gone from the first instance to the next instance, whatever. But you have multiple interchanges between Biden himself and Poroshenko himself. Basically, the two of them conspiring not only to break Ukrainian law, and not only to break American law, but to break all kinds of international laws too. They're basically, the U.S. holds the power to give a loan guarantee to the country of Ukraine. With that loan guarantee, they can scam then $1 billion loan facility out of the International Monetary Fund. Biden is too stupid to understand, in my opinion, he's too stupid to realize that the $3.7 million payoff that Hunter Biden gets is a pittance compared to the hundreds of millions that Poroshenko and its alleged George Soros and people like them scam out of this loan. They get the money from the IMF, and then the money disappears into these state-owned enterprises, which are controlled by the insiders, including Poroshenko. And through this pattern and practice, we thought, at least I thought back in 1988, I was actually interviewed for a merger and acquisition magazine, and my colleagues all made a lot of fun out of me because I
were you the centerfold for mergers and acquisition magazine?
No, it was an interview where they'd asked me what did I think was the significance of the falling of the Berlin Wall or something like that, and I said the forces of capitalism have been unleashed worldwide. That was a quote, and people thought that was
good. A
little bit over the top for me to say that at age 32 or whatever. And so they put montages. If you were
33, they would have loved it.
Exactly. Anyway, so I thought naively and foolishly back in 1988 and 89 that what would happen because the Berlin Wall fell, the Soviet Union was going to blow up, and the other nation rivals would embrace capitalism, I thought that we would be a model. The American system would be a model for the wider world, and the world would become less corrupt. Silly me. What has in fact happened is that the United States has become a banana dictatorship, or became a banana dictatorship in the Clinton years, arguably in the Bush years, and certainly in the Obama years. Actually, I was 33 in 1989, come to think of it.
There you go.
But so this is a case study that's now in this 1 hour and 4 minute tape of what they were doing. And it happened, it started in February, where basically Biden held out and said, look, we're going to give you this loan guarantee, but only if you fire this prosecutor who is investigating my son.
But it's important to also mention that this is not just a prosecutor. This is the prosecutor general. This is like William Barr.
Right.
And they replaced him with a guy who wasn't even an attorney. So it's like firing William Barr and hiring the janitor.
Yeah. So
to be the attorney general.
Yeah, and let's do a couple of comparisons, right? Trump has the temerity to call the newly elected president of Ukraine up and congratulate him in July of, was it 2017 when he did that? Right? When Trump...
No, I think it was later, right? Because when was the Ukrainian election?
Was it in July he called anyway. And well after 2016. Trump makes one phone call to congratulate the Ukrainian, whatever he was, Zelensky.
Yeah.
And for that, he's impeached. For that, this is a warpath. Here we have multiple phone conversations, multiple witnesses. One of the very interesting things that I see in these phone calls is that in almost every case, there's an operator connecting Biden to Poroshenko. And I would put that person under oath, the operator.
Well, there's got to be official recordings at the White House for this guy to say they're fake. It's like, oh, really?
Any signs of corruption, we burn those. I mean, that's why we haven't. Right? Exactly. Corruption, you mean corruption and evidence? That doesn't work so well.
Right.
But so here you have, a mastermind, a master-class politician. You might take the C and the L out of that. But you have Joe Biden, who's been in Washington, D.C. for a long time, acting like he's the grown-up in the room. This guy is, stealing badly in Ukraine for the benefit of his son. You also have John Kerry on some of these phone calls, and his stepson is stealing from the Ukraine as well. And the basic premise, in every board situation I've been involved in, I basically only agree to go on the board of a company if I feel like I can add some value, that I know something about it. You don't put the son of a jackass or two sons of a jackass on the board of a company, particularly in Ukraine. I mean, being on the board, if you take your responsibilities seriously, there's liability. There's significant potential liability depending on the local law of the country. And, for Joe Biden, to think that Hunter Biden has the common sense required. I know he got to Yale Law School, and I know he's got different credentials, but I know he was on the board of Amtrak. That experience, he learned a lot on the board of Amtrak. How do you ride a railroad into the ground? You let your father ride for free on Amtrak, which is probably what happened.
It's all those Jerry Nadler cheeseburgers that's running out the budget.
Right. So the scam here, the particular scam that Biden was so concerned about is this Burisma company, which Hunter goes on the board of, and it's a conglomerate engaged in all sorts of activities, and there's all sorts of corruption being investigated here by the prosecutor that Biden insisted on shit-canning. And so this is a long litany. If you take the time to go through an hour and almost 5 minutes, you will see call after call. You'll be able to hear Biden speak to Poroshenko. I think with that, Jason, we might consider playing that 1 4-minute excerpt so people can see what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So this is actually Biden on the phone with Poroshenko.
Barricades, tripwires. How are you? And if you get past all that, there's still the dogs.
Thank you.
Well, you are doing very well.
Sorry. We got a couple things playing there. Okay, here we go.
Congratulations on getting the new prosecutor general. I know there's a lot more that has to be done, but I really think that's good, and I understand you're working with the rod in the coming days on a number of additional laws to secure the IMF. But congratulations on installing the new prosecutor general. It's going to be critical for him to work quickly to repair the damage Shokin did. And I'm a man of my word. And that now that the new prosecutor general is in place, we're ready to move forward in signing that new $1 billion loan guarantee. And I don't know how you want to go about that. I'm not going to be able to get to Kyiv anytime soon, meaning next month or so. And I don't know whether you could either sign it with our ambassador, or if you came here, we could sign it, or if you want, we're inviting Groisman here later. I'm going to be talking to him later this morning, not for that purpose. We're inviting him to Washington, and so I'll leave it up to you as to how you want that done and when you want it done.
First of all, thank you very much indeed for these words of support. Believe me that it was a very tough challenge and very difficult job, and Mrs. Timoshenko and Mr. Leshko fraction tried to break this, because we not only voted for the new prosecutor general, which we do in a very short period of time, within 1 day we changed the law. By the way, in this law we presenting the new structure of the General Prosecutor Office, including the General Inspection, as we agreed.
Yes, that's real.
And the second thing, I immediately invite Lutsenko and said that he should contact your embassy, and I would be very pleased if you will have a certain person who can come either from Washington or whenever. We have here, I don't remember his name, the Ukrainian origin American prosecutor. He is a little bit old. I sent to the Jeffrey his name, and he was ready to come and to be assistant and advisor. With a very good experience in the American system, and he can be the person of trust with the new prosecution system. I think this is exactly the right time to do that, and if he is still ready to come and to cooperate from the very first step, from the very first minute of the new prosecutor, that is exactly what I'm looking for.
Well, let me get in contact with the Justice Department and pursue that. I'll get his name and let me find out where that is, because it is in our interest, obviously, to provide professional assistance as quick as we can so this gets up and started in the right direction. So I will move on that as soon as we hang up. I'll put that in train, and I'll get back to you as to what I'm able to do.
Absolutely. Second, thank you very much indeed. This is exactly what I'm looking for. The second thing is that I want to thank you that you give me your word that immediately when we change the legislation and I appoint the new prosecutor general, and it would be Yuri Lutsenko, as we agreed on our previous meeting in Washington, and when it happened, we can have this long guarantee, and thank you very much.
Well, I guess
Quid pro quo.
Well, not only that, Charles, I've noticed a few things about that call now that we listened to it. You can tell that Joe Biden is on the phone, and he's also like beep, or like hitting the phone buttons every now and then, because he can't even operate a phone. But the audio quality tells us that the recording is made in the room that Poroshenko is in. I could hear some shuffling around, almost like it's a phone in somebody's pocket. And at first I thought it was your microphone, so I turned down our microphones and I was still hearing it. And also the audio quality of Poroshenko speaking sounds very clearly like it's not through a phone. It's not some intelligence agency recording the call by tapping the line or some official government recording. It's someone in the room with Poroshenko recording it.
Yeah, could well be. And so the point here is, we're all focused we're saying the way the Clintons like to do things, and I think they've taught the Obamas a thing or two. Focus over here on Flynn. Focus over here on, tapping Flynn's phone. Focus on tapping Trump's phone. Don't focus on the fact that the NSA had to know Biden was doing this. The CIA had to know Biden was doing this. Right? And yet they have done nothing. They did nothing about it under Obama. They have done nothing about it since Obama. And think how many other situations there are. Think about Argentina. Argentina is a basket case. And the IMF arranged another rescue package, and almost immediately that money disappeared and the country's back in shit again. Oh. I mean, how many, if it were me, what I would do is I would make a list of every IMF deal, every World Bank deal that has happened. I'd go all the way back to 1988 And I'd sick forensic accountants on every one of those deals. They start in the recent past, but then go all the way back and try to get that money back. I mean, this has been a looting scheme in the name of unregulated globalists.
Argentina looks nice.
Argentina is beautiful. Buenos Aires is absolutely beautiful. There are portions of it that are not so nice, obviously, but the prime pieces are beautiful and the suburbs are amazing. But so here we have one case study in Ukraine. Think about what tapes the CIA must have on the Clinton Foundation and the Haiti Rescue Project, where $10 to $13 billion disappeared, right? And now you were going to say something about this Guardian piece.
Well, it's just interesting because we've got the Ukrainian president saying that the call was fabricated.
Right, by Russians. It's a Russian plot.
But not the current president. I'm saying they're talking about Poroshenko. Where is it here? He says it's fabricated. Here. So Poroshenko on Wednesday called the leaked audio fabricated. And a Biden spokesman told the Washington Post it was heavily edited. Oh, well, that's true because they put up 4 minutes of it, so that's editing.
We have the whole press conference
thing as well. But in other words, they want to get these sound bites out there that are, essentially true. Like, this is lawyer language here. Saying that it was heavily edited is true. And then, saying it's a nothing burger that landed with a thud, that's just throwaway language. That's like sort of newspaper marketing talk.
And newsflash, a nothing burger would not land with a thud.
Right? It would make no sound whatsoever.
It wouldn't land.
A lead burger.
Wow. So, Biden is proving once again that he can't even lie artfully. And, note to the Democratic Party and note to our viewers, we are taking a little bit of a victory lap here, maybe prematurely, but Jason, you'll remember the epic poster you did for little Mikey.
Right.
On a Sunday, we did that one, I think, on a Sunday before Super Tuesday, and by Wednesday he was out.
It had to be the poster, Charles.
It was absolutely the poster. The poster was almost as good as the most recent one.
Let me see if I can bring that up for people to enjoy here quickly. That was called Magic Mike, wasn't it? It wasn't too much of a surprise that he dropped out. He is a total clown.
Yeah. A somewhat poorer, Magic Mike, there you go.
There he is.
That thing went out Sunday. He was out of the. He was saying he's in it to win it. He's going to keep his staff going till November, and he was out by Wednesday.
Cooling his heels with the gay ice cream by Wednesday.
That's right. That's right. Along with Bill and Biden, I'd forgotten.
Another scoop, please. Huh? Another scoop of ice cream. So what else do we want to discuss? They're saying, Charles, that there's going to be another round of questioning. I guess this is, in response. This is a whole investigation that's been opened in Ukraine. Why is William Barr's Department of Justice? This is interesting, particularly given that just the other day, Barr said he doesn't expect that there'll be a criminal investigation into Biden.
I think we have to be very careful about what he said. What he said at the time was, at this time, I expect that something like that, we will not open a criminal investigation, something like that. But there were two weasel phrases, at this time and I expect.
But when you say weasel, what do you mean?
Or, conditional phrases. Time changes and you change your mind, and expect, you can expect something, but something else can happen. So it wasn't a definitive, under my watch, we're never going to investigate the former president and the former vice president or any cabinet level.
Well, he's never going to speak in those kind of definitive terms.
But remember that there was all this, the way this worked is that Giuliani, months ago, started on a project to go over to Ukraine, that he enlisted the aid of, I think, One American News Network, and John Solomon was involved, and they rooted around. John has a lot of experience internationally and in Ukraine, a lot of contacts, and they rooted around, and they discovered evidence of this plot. And right away, the deep state punched back hard, and even Lindsey Graham and other senators were saying, well, look, if you have evidence of criminal activity, you better bring it forward. So Rudy did. And Durham has had, apparently, and maybe others have had, the evidence, whatever salient evidence Rudy Giuliani has. And as I've been saying with regard to the Clinton Foundation, based on my experience with much smaller foundations, every time you solicit a grant for a purpose, there's a long record typically of email correspondence. There could be snail mail correspondence. There's presentations back and forth. There are meeting notes. There's typically financial statements for every single grant. And there could be a tremendous amount of paperwork. And that's before you start thinking about taking a dollar-based grant and converting it into whatever the currency is in Burkina Faso or Nigeria or something like that, and keeping track of what you did with the money that you solicited to make sure that it only went to the intended purpose. There should be a lot of records out there. And I am certain once the Ukrainian government, which it apparently has done, opens a serious investigation in Ukraine, they don't have the same protections of defendants in Ukraine. You know, I have a funny feeling if they want to figure out what really happened, it's not going to involve a lot of talking.
What was that guy's name? Magnitsky.
Exactly.
They just stick him in jail and be like, oh, he died. Whoops. They give him the Epstein treatment. Although I don't think Epstein is dead. Getting off track.
So here is wanting, people have been itching to say, you know, why isn't anything happening? One of the reasons it's not happening is that what we uncovered, I think, by focusing on the Clinton Foundation was just one large slice of corrupt activities that the rest of the world has been ignoring. Once you dive into the pool, you realize the pool is deep indeed. You know, there's a lot of water, there's a lot of bad fish swimming in it.
Well, and the hairs are standing up on his legs.
I wouldn't be in that pool.
Kids are grabbing his hair or whatever.
Right. So where we've gotten to this, if we go back into the timeline a little bit, Jason, that Alana Goodman piece, where is it?
There we go.
So May 5th, 2016, 8 days before Biden was on that phone call, Alana Goodman, who's a fine investigative reporter, now at the Washington Examiner, did a piece that got a lot of attention, basically making the connections that I'm not somebody who's, you know, a charity person. I'm somebody who focuses on exposing frauds, and I did it with GE. And GE was a lot more complicated than the Clinton Foundation or any of these charity frauds. So she writes this piece, and then Zero Hedge picks it up on the 7th of May. And with that, I start going on Fox News, and a lot of attention is placed in this. And around this same time frame is when Donald Trump becomes the presumptive nominee. So when we think about the motivations of a Comey, the motivations of an Obama, the motivations of the various people in the Democratic Party, you have to imagine that they were covering off their exposure areas or trying to do it. They referred to an insurance policy. But when you see somebody like me and with my background zeroing in on the Clinton Foundation as a fraud, you know that creates major potential exposure for Hillary Clinton. And you also know, if you're on the other side of the table, just how crooked you are and just how exposed you are. So it probably lit a fire under this idiot's ass to say, we got to do something. We got to get Trumpy. We got to make sure that we have an October surprise ready for him. Does anyone have a dossier we could cook up here? How about you, Mark Elias at Perkins Coie? Can we come up with some scheme to in the event that by some miracle Trump wins, that we can make sure that we've got him where we need him? And I think the origins of going after Trump started well before he announced. You know, I as a guess, the Clintons, the Obamas, were sitting there and saying, wait a minute, you know, this whole expedition involving Barack Obama, there's so many vulnerabilities. You know, what was really going on in selling the Senate seat? Who was involved in that? Who knew about that? If we had a real FBI head, not Mueller, you know, what might we have gotten to the bottom of regarding Obama prior to the inauguration, January 20th, 2009? So many skeletons in the closet. And so when we start thinking through this hiring of the Steele dossier, the meetings in Trump Tower in June, the tapping of tapes, lines, the FISA warrants and all that, you have to understand what it is these people are trying to cover up. And it's not failure to fill out a form. It's not getting the 990 wrong on a charity. This has been a massive criminal enterprise involving both parties going back decades. And Donald Trump stands as one person, for all his faults, and all of us have faults, who has the power to crack the spine of this and to really put an enormous amount of pressure on the criminals, one or more members of the criminal conspiracy, to start singing from the inside. And I think that is starting. Just on my way over here before this happened, before the show, there was an announcement that the Department of Education has uncovered billions of dollars of grants from Chinese and other foreign countries to American universities that were supposed to be disclosed but have not been disclosed. I think before we finish on this, we're going to discover that the various governments, various corrupt entities have been using straw donors to make what they claim are personal contributions to these prestige, image-shaping universities, and then using that money and those connections to shape a narrative that globalism makes sense, that China's the rising power, India's the rising power, we have so much to atone for, we've had our day in the sun, we should just lead from behind and shut up. I mean, that's what comes out of the Ivy League universities now, the elite universities. And I think we're now, the battle of the ages has been joined, finally, I think. We have Memorial Day, which for me, my father was in the Navy, and I think, the people, brave men and women who served and serve to defend this country need to be honored 365 days of the year, but especially on Memorial Day. It's a solemn weekend.
Is it this weekend?
Yeah.
It's canceled, basically. I mean, we can't really do anything.
Well, Dr. Fauci says that we should go out and get some fresh air on Memorial Day, because he's such a genius. So within this context, you have a massive corruption scheme. A lot of people knew about it. Loretta Lynch knew about it. Eric Holder knew about it. Comey knew about it. Mueller knew about it. Many people in the FBI and Justice and IRS knew about it. And all that stuff we don't investigate the way we should investigate it. Instead, because some English idiot writes a demonstrably false dossier that's a fantasy, Hillary Clinton's team through Perkins Coie decides to overpay for that document, give it to John McCain so he could leak it to Comey or send it to Comey, give it to Harry Reid, stir up a ruckus, get the mainstream media all down a fantasy at the same time that you now have a real set of scandals to think about. And these are scandals where if we were to do our job properly, you could go after China maybe for some COVID reparations, maybe. But if we were to do our job properly, going back over the last 30 years, we could just do the last 10 years, but if you did the last 30 years, we could probably get out of debt. We could probably fines and
just penalties. Recapturing the stolen money. I agree with that.
And that to me is a lot easier, because once you clean out the people like this Judge Sullivan and others like him who've decided they're no longer judges. They're people who are going to shape the world, make policy. If the result doesn't go their way, they're just going to do whatever. Once you get rid of that stuff and appoint a real judiciary and get the public behind you, you go on a literal crusade, not a religious crusade, but a financial crusade to expose this corruption. Give the public, instead of these contact tracing ideas, instead of doing that, give people incentives, a financial incentive. And I'm not looking for one myself, but just give people a financial incentive to, from the inside, say, I am aware of corruption. Here's $1 billion problem. Give that person 10%.
They have that, don't they? Whistleblower. That's not
real. Now what you do, you try to be a whistleblower and they go after you.
That's what's happening with Moynihan and Doyle, right? They're trying to do a key tam lawsuit to expose the corruption and get some of the money that's recovered?
I'm not aware of their precise tactics, but I think they're definitely trying to use different means to make sure that
We've heard of other whistleblowers using key tam lawsuits to do that.
Right. So the issue here is that, particularly for the uninitiated, people who are not financially sophisticated, international transactions of any type are rife with potential for fraud, right? You can only be in one place at a time. And particularly if you're, let's say, based in Boston, trying to manage Clinton Health Access Initiative in 60 countries around the world, including many that have no law, no roads, no electricity, no nothing, and you're going to start shipping hundreds of millions of dollars into these countries willy-nilly, month to month, week to week, with no local controller and no accounting firm and no nothing. And the currencies are gyrating like this constantly, and you get an expense report that says, somebody spent 700 bananas to buy this, and it really should have cost one banana, so you steal 699 bananas. That kind of stuff is very tough to police, and yet that's exactly what has been going on through this Clinton Foundation, now going on through the Obama Foundation, other presidential foundations, financed by the Gates Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation, other people who have a reason to want to purchase influence with politicians, and for whom, the odd 100 million missing doesn't matter. So this is, I think, a very significant set of developments. The Ukrainian story, which of course, CBS and NBC and ABC will poo-poo and not cover because they'd rather cover an excited story about Anderson Cooper's new baby or something like that.
Anderson Cooper had a baby?
He has surrogate, yeah. He just got a baby.
Wow.
And everyone's gushing all over that instead of focusing on this real scandal. And one hopes that the deep state and the lamestream are misunderestimating Durham and Barr and the other people.
Wait a minute, it looks just like Anderson Cooper. Are we sure it's not a clone?
I don't know. So I just wanted to encourage people. I know this is a weekend where people try to spend time with family and friends, if to the extent you're allowed to do that these days. We appreciated, Jason and I, that people would be trying to spin against this video. It's only an hour and 5 minutes. It's really worth your while. Just watch it on your computer or something like that. And note to Joe Biden, before leaving aside the creepy Tara Reid and other episodes, of which there are many, and there are going to be many more, leaving that aside, leaving this Ukraine scandal aside, you also have the fact that your idiotic son, Hunter, in addition to getting involved in this Ukraine mess, somehow scammed $1 billion investment out of China, of all places. And now we're coming close to a shooting war with China over what they're doing in Hong Kong as we speak. There are going to be huge democracy protests, in theory, starting tomorrow.
In Hong Kong? Because
the Chinese central government in Beijing just changed the law and said that they basically, I would argue, abrogated the treaty with the UK, the handover treaty, saying it was one country, two systems for 50 years. Now they're saying that if you're a democracy protester, you're a terrorist. And China is threatening to go, really, it has, I believe, already laid down the gauntlet to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is finished.
Whoa.
As far as I can tell. So can you think of a more challenged candidate to propose than Joe Biden? I mean, there are many challenged candidates in the Democrat side. I mean, I suppose Hillary Clinton, is she a better or worse candidate than Joe Biden at this stage? He's got a lingering set of sex scandals. He's got the Ukraine mess and an open investigation targeting him personally. He was the point person on Ukraine. He loved the Iran deal. As former Senator Zell Miller said, who was on the Senate committees involving international stuff with Biden, he said something like, I know Biden, I know him very well. Every single decision he's ever made regarding foreign policy is wrong. And then
Who said that?
Zell Miller, who was a Democrat.
Wow.
That was at one of the presidential conventions a while back.
Charles, just real quick on this Hong Kong thing. I mean, declaring peaceful protesters as terrorists and then beating them up. Are we sure this is about Hong Kong and not New York City?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are those, it seems there are many types of people, but in the broad categories, there are people who cherish their own independence and like to soak up information and make informed decisions themselves. So it's that group of people. I count myself as one of those type of people. Then there are the people who want the busybodies, the nannies, who want to tell you, they're so smart that they can tell everybody in the world the correct decision to make, and they want to order you or make sure that you make those correct decisions for the benefit of the group. That's more the Communist Chinese approach. And I think we now find ourselves on, today's the 22nd, I guess, of May?
Yeah.
With, 5.5 months until the election. We are on the boil here. We've got a debate, more than a debate, a Cold War, I would argue, with China, where we have said, listen, the years where you steal $500 billion a year from our country, that's over. That's so 2016. We're just not letting you do that anymore. You may be the rising power 20, 30, 40 years from now, but we are the power in 2020, and we are going to encourage our businesses and our service providers to come the F home and to manufacture and provide services from an American location, employing American sourced products and labor, and we're going to become an export power again. We're going to zealously guard our technology. We're not going to allow you to pay bribes to thirsty professors so that you can steal our technology on the college campuses. That's over. And, actually, there are many more Chinese people than there are American, obviously, but China has also angered India, which has 100 million less people than China and is a neighbor to China. So any kind of real rough contest between the United States and China, we're going to win it.
I'm surprised they haven't done something to try to make India destroy China. That's the way they like to roll.
Yeah, but so this is we're at this is not a normal year or a normal election year. This is a period of time, in my view, where the cronies know they're exposed. Bill Gates, somebody was responding, I was speaking to somebody, I won't say who noticed that Bill Gates looks as if he's aged 15 years in the last 3 years.
Really?
And I've noticed that too. He's about my age. And to me, he looks much older than I am. But anyway.
Plotting an evil plan to take over the world. It'll take a lot out of you, Charles.
Well, or discovering that your plan doesn't work and that you can't stop doing it because you've already done it, and there's a lot of evidence in the public domain, and that you're the richest person in the room when people start looking for money, would tend to take a little shine out of you. So I think we're going to hear, the celebrities have gotten together, the big Twitter followers have gotten together, and they're all promoting a vaccine, a race for a vaccine, and continued lockdowns, and it's irresponsible to not do that. I think, on the other hand, the populace at large is sick of being stuck at home because some idiot pretending to be an expert said the correct way to deal with something that might have an impact a negative impact the same as an annual flu, because that could happen. What we need to do is shut the entire world economy down for 90 days. I mean, the balancing of that was ridiculous. It's not a money issue. It's that when you take an economy, a well-oiled machine that's moving, has 200 different nations in it, lots of things going on, and you just arbitrarily say, because some conflicted idiot, Fauci, who has patents for vaccines, who has a way to benefit financially should this thing move in a certain direction, because that person says, supported, that a model has told him, a financial model, that this is the correct thing to do. We say, oh, okay, that's fine.
Biden's been tweeting models saying like, oh, if Trump had done this months before, here's how many fewer people would die. It's like, what? This is more simulations. What, do you have a crystal ball? You don't know what would have happened if he had done that. We just heard last week or something like that 66% of the people in New York who have contracted coronavirus were under lockdown.
Yeah.
And yesterday, the Washington Post published that it doesn't transmit easily on surfaces. So day to day, they don't even understand what the virus is doing. How can they make a vaccine for it?
Yeah. I think the virus, I would like to coin a term. The virus in this case is feudalism, F-U-T-I-L-I-S-M, which is this is futile behavior. The idea that we should have gone back in 88 and 89, thanks to Poppy Bush, and said, oh yeah, it's a great idea for our car companies to stop employing American workers and instead start chasing
factories in Mexico and stuff.
Well, in China and India. We should have thought that through a little bit better. Because when any business, if you're involved in business your whole life, you have suppliers, they need to make a living, and the suppliers often have suppliers. And if you're sensible about it, there's a big multiplier effect if you do all your business in one country. You operate in one country and sell to the world, your country's going to be doing very well. If you instead say, all I'm going to really do inside this country is put a label on a lot of work that other people did around the world, you're not really benefiting the home country too much, particularly if you're encouraging all American businesses to import the innards of whatever you're slapping the label on. So the pinhead economics experts who sent us down this idea of globalism as a great way to model the world, they're all wrong. And Trump knew that. Trump's written books about it, has been in speeches about it for years, and now we're going to see a reversal here, a very big reversal. The biggest risk I see here is an armed conflict starting small and escalating suddenly.
China.
With China, or so who knows where it'll actually start? But
I mean, Charles, what do you say to people who are looking at Donald Trump bringing in this vaccine czar who's still got stock and financial interests in the pharmaceutical company making the vaccine? It's hard to understand what Trump is doing if we just look at, on the surface, what we're presented with.
Yeah, I think that this exercise, and I'm very positive about many of the moves that Donald Trump has made. I think this exercise, shutting the country down because some pinheads said a model told you to do it, is in the end, that's on Donald Trump. I mean, he should have taken a few extra days, and he should have talked to differing points of view.
Yeah.
How sure are we of this? And to shut Wyoming down because we have a problem in New York is not the smartest thing in the world, in my view. Well, let's learn from this. Also, I'm not a huge fan of the Kennedys or Robert Kennedy, but his work on vaccines is very interesting and noteworthy, and sensible, actually. So vaccines are not a cure-all. People die taking vaccines, and so that's the correct. That should have been actually taped
Duct
shut.
tape is what we need on Fauci, not this mask. That'll keep the virus out.
That's right.
Tape his face up. Well, I mean, Charles, there's a lot of questions about vaccines, and something that hasn't been spoken about enough is that this proposed vaccine from Moderna is using this mRNA technique, messenger RNA, where they literally want to inject genetic material into your body. The RNA is like the recipe for your cells to replicate themselves. And the way a virus works is it attacks the cell, injects its own virus RNA that instructs the cells to start manufacturing virus cells. So their proposal is to have, they're going to map the coronavirus messenger RNA, inject that into you with a vaccine, and get your cells to start making spike proteins and things. They've never done this before. No mRNA vaccine has ever been used before, and they have no idea what it will do when they inject it into you.
Well, I'm kind of simple-minded when it comes to stuff like this. If you come to me, and if I'm a teacher, and you come to me and you say, all right, Mr. Teacher, I want to graduate to the next level. Well, I'll look at your scores and your exams. I'll look at how and you come to me and you say, well, I've got, out of 100 points, I've got 115 points because I got extra credit on every single exam and this and that. I've aced everything. I want to jump 3 years ahead into this discipline because I think I can handle it. I might say yes. But if you come to me with nothing, no paper, no nothing, you've convinced me I'm the president and it's on me. I've shut the economy down now, it looks like for 90 days in total is what it'll be roughly. I've shut the economy down. That's a lot, right? That's a quarter of that's $5 trillion of economic output, roughly.
Wow.
That I've
just
disappeared, roughly. And not to mention the damage in changing behavior and what it's going to do to generations of students and people.
Oh, yeah.
I've done that. And now what I want to do, because I've done, and we flattened the curve, which we didn't really do. But anyway, now what I want to do is instead of pumping out a vaccine the proven way, let's just try some new approach. I say, go back to China, spend some time making bat soup. I mean, just ridiculous.
Well, I can tell you, Charles, throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to beta test a lot of different things, computer hardware, cameras, computer software. The first one never works properly. That's why they want to test it. And the concept of using a totally new technological, biological approach to vaccination and eliminating test steps is literally the worst idea I've ever heard of.
It's reckless.
It's worse than reckless. It's a guarantee for,
Right.
unknown outcome. You're talking about literally reprogramming the genetic structure of your cells and how your body replicates. They have no idea what this might do.
Ixnay. That cannot happen. So that's
why is Trump behind that? This is this Operation Warp Speed. He's got to turn this around very quickly. And there's a lot of people who read anonymous posts on the internet and think that this is some deep, I don't know how many dimensions the chess is up to yet, but does it include, injecting us with experimental genetic stuff?
That's not going to happen.
I hope not. Alan Dershowitz wants it to happen.
Well, Alan Dershowitz slipped up bigly on your interview. Your interview's gotten a lot of attention, and congratulations to you.
Thank you. I hope that people will watch the follow-up, because that's where I really explain what I feel Alan Dershowitz is trying to deflect people away from. I talk about how there was a cartoon released like a day or two later that got 150,000 views. Seems like a David Brock Media Matters type of campaign to deflect attention away from something. It's interesting to see all these tactics in action and to see how they run the gamut from, I would consider what I'm doing low level to the mainstream media all the way up to the president. It's the same approach that they're taking.
So if we could just close by going back to that video, putting it up there for a second.
Sure.
The main one.
Oop, it's already run away from us.
No,
Let's get it back.
Is that the hour? No, not that one. The Ukraine to invade. Which one is it?
Getting there. Now wait a minute. Wasn't it the first one listed here initially?
It's the one that has the full hour and
4. This is it.
Yeah. So this, carve some time out this weekend if you can to really watch this and consider. I intend to watch it several more times because it's.
Well, we should say the channel is called NABU Leaks, which is the National Association of.
No idea.
No, National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. That's what it is. So this is an organization, NABU, that was created by the FBI. Lee Stranahan has been speaking about this for a long time. Looks like Lee might return next week, and we're going to do a show on exactly this. Because Lee has been all over it. He interviewed a whistleblower who I think either worked at NABU or the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine or the Ukrainian Embassy in Washington, somebody who's tightly connected to this and has firsthand information. And this is all, Lee hasn't changed his story. He's been talking about this for like 3 years, and then bang, here it is.
Yeah. So this is well worth watching, well worth, you have to struggle through this introductory period where there's Ukrainian or Russian or whatever it is with the subtitles, but then there are multiple clips you can hear for yourself of Biden being hooked into conversations by a White House operator, one or more White House operators. So as a guest, Durham and the team have been all over this for weeks and months. And look at this as just one test case. It's not this story is not Ukraine Gate. This is corruption gate. Everything you thought was law and order, that's not law and order. This is a racketeering operation. It has been going on for decades. It involves both parties. It involves trillions and tens of trillions of dollars. It must end. And
it's causing the country to collapse.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. So please take the time to watch this. And then if you can think of people you believe would be interested in this, send it to them by email, tweet it out, tweet it to Donald Trump, tweet it to people with lots of Twitter followers. And I believe more is coming on this. There's chatter that more revelations are going to come. One American News Network was in Ukraine with Giuliani to get this organized. And One American News, I have friends there, and I talked to somebody there, and they absolutely are all over this. So I'd expect on One American News there's going to be more reporting Fox did cover it briefly, but they had a little bit of this, and then they had Poroshenko saying, "Oh, that's not my voice on the tape."
Right.
I mean, come on.
Of course it is.
Come on, dude.
It's Biden's like, "Hey, Poroshenko."
Yeah.
It's like, nah, it's not me.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. Was the team that went and the Russian team that has punked Maxine Waters and Adam Schiff?
Oh, I don't know. It's some radio show that just called him up.
Right. Very different. Very different. So again, hats off to the art department. Good luck on Memorial Day weekend, everybody. And
I've got a full day of broadcasting coming up, Charles. I'm going to be on InfoWars with Alex Jones in about an hour or so. And then at 3 p.m., well, actually, it might get pushed back because this InfoWars thing is pushed back. But then later today, we've got David Hawkins, Discovery CSI. And tonight, John Cullen's coronavirus investigation. So there's a full day of programming for Crowdsource the Truth viewers. I do want to remind people, it's really important if you watch frequently, even if this is the first time you've seen the show, I can't keep bringing you these shows without your support and sponsorship. And basically what I've done is eliminated corporate sponsors who might say, hey, stop talking about Joe Biden corruption. We want Joe Biden to be president. And by having viewers sponsor the show, people know that there's no undue economic influence. There's no producer. There's no editor who's going to tell me to stop talking about this. This is all about bringing you the information that you want to see. And I think everybody by now knows that YouTube is not free. YouTube is using the heroin dealer business model where they hook you in by giving you something you want for free, and then they control you. So people can buy back their ability to watch and listen to information that they want. Wow, it looks like it's really going to rain. Anyway, with that, Charles, I want to thank all the generous Subscribestar and Patreon sponsors, and we'll be back on Sunday. Will we have slides on Sunday? We'll see what the weather's doing. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. If you haven't seen the Alan Dershowitz interview, because a lot of people have just seen this clip of him sharing his opinion about mandatory vaccination, which, first of all, his opinion is wrong. The case law that he refers to and the science it was based on 115 years ago is totally not applicable to the vaccine that's being proposed.
The unproven vaccine.
Unproven technology. Right. It's not even a new vaccine made in the same style and utilizing the same scientific principles as previous tested vaccines, which have been around for 220-something years. This is new, never been attempted before, not even testing it on animals. They just want to start injecting it in adults, children, everybody. It could take a generation to understand what genetic manipulation might do to people, and they're thinking that in 18 months they're going to have sufficient tests to know if this is safe or not. Anyway, so people can watch that original interview I did with Alan Dershowitz. There's a lot of important points in there. The most important thing is not his opinion about a legal ruling, because he's not in the government. He's not in the Supreme Court. He's just a guy spouting off his opinion. The things he said about Jeffrey Epstein, the Clinton Foundation, the Rothschilds, the Clintons, all this, that's what they don't want you to pay attention to. So go back and watch that again, and please watch my follow-up to that interview. We'll be back on Sunday, Charles. Thanks for a great special report.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, everybody.